Hello guys and welcome for another Aeternum video. In most games people always look up for the best DPS or the most tankiest builds. In many cases people go for those two extreme ends and they forget that there is also something in the middle between them. In today's video I will show you exactly this type of a build, which was the backbone of group PvP since really long time. A build that no warring company cannot afford to miss out on, as otherwise they will get rolled in no time. Guys, today we are taking a look at the legendary IGVG setup, which is considered by many as the best overall supportive build. Before going over the stuff needed to make this build work, I want to remind you that your support is really appreciated and that our Discord community is still growing with more than 700 people in it. There we discuss all topics related to the game, but of course we also share interesting and funny moments and things from the real world. Being part of this nice community is free, so feel free to join us. Thank you. Now let's get back to business and let's see why the Void and Ice Gauntlet combination, or as many know it as VGIG, is so powerful in mass PvP. Usually I like to start with the itemization and the artifacts needed for the build, but this time we will change the course and we will begin with the purpose of the build during those big fights and the respective skill trees. Both the Void and the Ice Gauntlet have amazing buffs and debuffs which apply a lot of slows, roots, rents, weaken and empower. This is basically the perfect mixture of bonuses that every frontline in the form of a bruiser or a tank would love to have besides them. Having this in mind, we can already tell that VGIG players are always nearby the front line of the army, but at the same time they are not tanks, so stepping a bit further might get you in big trouble. The skills necessary for the build are quite simple, but mastering the correct rotation of them is the part where you can excel a lot. On the Void side, we will need the core 3 abilities, Scream, Oblivion and Orb. The Scream will allow us to root people for up to 5 meters distance, and also having the perk for it, we will apply Disease on them for 33% incoming healings. The Oblivion will give us a small area in which all allies will gain 15% empower, as well as 25% increased stamina regeneration, and also each attacked enemy will receive 5% weaken for up to 3 stacks. Also, having the perk for the Oblivion will reduce the limited duration buffs such as Empowers and Fortifications with 15% upon using the ability. Last but not least, the Orb, which is unblockable projectile, will apply random slow to the enemies, and at max distance it will even heal our allies for a small amount. When the perk of the Orb is also applied, the reducing of base duration of enemies' non-consumable buffs will be minus 75%. With the remaining points you can improvise a bit as you want, but in general the passives that you see are quite good and useful to complete the full skill tree of the Void Gauntlet. Going further to the Ice part, you would not see something unusual. Here the core spells are the Ice Storm, Ice Shower and of course the Entomb. As we already know, the Ice Storm is used to create a slow field in which our enemies will also receive damage on top of the slow. The Ice Shower will apply a path of ice, which will root any enemy that tries to walk over it, and it will also apply rend for them. Last but not least, we have the Entomb, which will be our savior in case the things don't go our way. The core usage of the Ice Gauntlet for that build is to try and predict the upcoming 5 to 10 seconds. This way, with the correct coordination between your team and your shot caller, you will be able to block the escape paths of your enemies when the so-called bombs are created in the center of the point. Combining both weapons and utilizing their cooldowns is quite a challenge, especially when we have to consider that both gauntlets are using mana in order to use their abilities. In order to avoid that struggle and to maintain healthy levels of mana at all times, there is quite an easy fix, and the name for that fix is Magnetic Gauntlets. This will be our artifact of choice, which we will have to use for the build, and the best piece to complement the VGIG in general. The reason is the unique passive, which will provide us with 50% increased critical chance with the cost of 30% of our critical damage. As we are aiming to play a support role and also we're gonna use heavy gear, the damage is not our main priority, but instead the constant debuffs applied to the enemies. In order to get the maximum out of our rotation and to keep our cooldowns as low as possible, we have to also mention that the passives Refreshing Frailty and Refreshing Precision from the Void Gauntlet skill tree reduce consistently our cooldowns when we hit more than few people with critical hits. Both of them provide us with up to 25% cooldown for a maximum of 50% if we critically hit our targets, and this is exactly the reason why the Magnetic Gauntlets are the best part for that build. For last perk, you can choose a type of conditioning or simply some of the weapon perks. My personal choice was Flame Conditioning as it helps me a lot with the incoming fire damage from all the enemy DPS fire staffs. For the remaining pieces on your armor, you would have two different options. The first and the cheapest one is to go with 4 pieces of Frigid Down set. They are quite good even at gear score of 700 with the illegal combination of Enchanted Ward and Elemental Aversion. For a third perk on all of the pieces, you can decide on your own what you want to place, but in general keep in mind that all the necessary perks for the Ice and the Void Gauntlets are mandatory. The Diminishing Orb and the Entomb perks are going on both of your weapons, which means that the remaining Nullifying Oblivion, Petrifying Scream, Unending Tow and Deadly Frost will have to be used on your armor pieces. The second option, and the one that will require a bit more gold and materials, is if you want to obtain a full 725 gear score set. This would mean that the illegal perk combination from the Frigid set is no longer available. If you opt for crafting those pieces, keep in mind that the weapon perks remain the same and the priority for your defensive perks will have to go over to the Enchanted Ward. For a second defensive perk, I would suggest you to take a type of conditioning in the form of Slash, Flame or Strike, as those are the 3 main types of damage around the point. Moving over to the weapons, there is not much to be said, as both weapons are set in stone and there is not much room for discussion. For a Void Gauntlet, you need a crafted one with Orb of Decay, Plague Crits and Keen, while for the Ice Gauntlet you want to get yourself the Deep Freeze artifact with last perk Healing Tomb. The gem in the Void should be Runeglass Malachite, but for the Ice you would not need any Runeglass effect, as none of your abilities will be able to proc it. This is why I'm running a clean pristine Onyx. The last piece of the gearing puzzle are the jewelries, and here again we have quite a simple variation. In the amulet slot, your best choice is to go with Artifact Ankh with a third perk again Slash, Flame or Strike protection. For a ring, the best choice would be Hearty, Keen and Purifying Heart, and for earring, I personally think that the best option is Fortifying Toast, Refreshing and Refreshing Toast. The Heartrune without a doubt is Brutal Heartrune of Grasping Vines for additional rend and weaken to your opponents. And now, since we went over everything related to the playstyle, the gear and the different tips to maintain our effectiveness, let's take a final look at the attributes necessary for this build to work. As mentioned earlier, we are using heavy loadout and therefore the damage is our second priority. That's why I'm running with 350 constitution for a decent amount of protection and HP, combined with 50 focus for additional healing received, and whatever I have left in my bucket, I just drop it in intelligence. Reaching 250 intelligence would be the best case scenario, as all of your damage over time effects will get an increased 30% duration, but this of course is not always possible due to not enough gear score. If you feel way too comfortable in 350 constitution, maybe it would be an option for you to drop down to 300 and gain those extra points in intelligence. And with that guys, I think I've covered all the bits and pieces for the most legendary support build out there, which even to this day remains the undisputed #1 debuff type of a mage. Please let me know in the comments if you already played in such role and if you've tried a similar build in your games. Also, I would like to remind you that supporting the channel is free and at the same time it helps me a lot moving forward. In the description you would find links to all the streaming platforms where you can catch me live, as well as the Discord community. As always, thank you so much for watching and I will see you on the next one.